Hello there, Chris here from Becker's Models. Are you a new modeler or a returning modeler back to the scene and you're thinking, yeah, I want to get into aircraft models. What kit should I get first? Well, this video is for you. I want you to do more than anything, stop listening to the geriatric gatekeepers out there who are always telling new people come to the hobby, you need to buy a 172 scale Airfix or Revell or Italeri, blah blah blah, and you need to learn your basic modeling skills first. No, you don't. They're wrong. What you need to do, go get one of these. You've clicked on this video because you've either been sent here by the great YouTube algorithm in the sky, or you've searched out for a video on, hey look, what kit should I buy first? Now you've been delving through the quagmire of all the information out there on the internet and you're scratching your head going, well, I don't know what to believe, what to do, so where should I go? Most of the information out there, the advice, it's all subjective opinion, okay? It's all wrapped up in a neat little bow called nostalgia. Nostalgia is a lovely thing. It's great to reminisce about what you did as a kid and bring that forward to the present day. A lot of modelers today, they anchor their ideas to what they did 30, 40 years ago as a kid, and they bring them forward and say, well, this is what it is. But here are some cold, hard, objective facts. Scale models have improved immeasurably in the last 30 or 40 years since you're able to go down to your corner store and get an Airfix kit in a plastic bag. The engineering and manufacturing of model kits has advanced tremendously. There's been continual refinement in fit, engineering, increasing the detail, more precision tooling, computer-aided design, and overall complexity, and covering more and more subjects in all different types of scales and more subcategories. Now there's a plethora of new aftermarket companies with bolt-on products, with things that improve things like the new Quinta decal sets for your cockpits are absolutely fantastic. There's more painting and weathering products out there. All these new materials, new tools have really lifted the hobby into a much more advanced category than where it was all that time ago. Look, there's still modelers out there who are doing the same thing they were doing 20, 30, 40 years ago, and that's fine, that's great, they get a lot of enjoyment out of it. However, there's lots of alternatives and better ways to get started or restarted in this hobby. Now, having said all that, I'm going to advise you to buy a 20-year-old Tamiya kit as your first aircraft model. Let's go to the bench and I'll explain in detail why this is the best choice. Here's Tamiya's 148 scale Spitfire Mark V. This was released in 1994. It has the typical two-sprue layout it's common across all the single-engined fighter planes that they made during this period. P-51, Focke-Wulfs, BF-109s, very simple. You've got your two fuselage halves, lower wing, upper wing, and a few details. The biggest plus for these kits is they fit together so well. Not that hard to do. Okay, here is a Mark I Spitfire, very similar to the Mark V by Tamiya. I've put this together as a basic paint mule. I haven't used any putty, I've just used basic Tamiya Extra Thin. Tamiya Extra Thin as the main solvent, because if you press the parts together while applying this, it's a capillary reaction glue, you actually squeeze out a little bit of melted plastic. It actually melts the plastic together. So, there's here on the cowl and at the top and at the back, there's a very, very minor gap there that can be filled within 5 minutes. With a little bit of liquid putty. The instructions are very clear. They're precisely done, they're quite clear, they give you all the paint callouts as you go, and this hasn't changed for Tamiya over the years. Okay, they give you nice colour callouts at the back, and while the decals are a little bit thick, for some people they go down very nicely. You shouldn't have a problem with this at all. One of the reasons why I recommend going to 148 scale is for these fighter planes, World War II, they weren't that big, so you've got a little bit more room there, a little bit, your eyes aren't as good as they used to be. If you're a returning modeler, you're in your 40s, okay, and you really want to get to the detail there, and maybe you want to go back to 172 scale afterwards, fine, but just build one of these first because, easy to handle, you can see all the detail, and you can glue the parts together from the start. I want you to know that even experienced modelers will come back to these relatively simple kits because one of the benefits they have, and makes perfect sense for a beginner modeler, is these are what we call mojo enhancers. When you tackle a big project, big 1/32nd scale aircraft, or very complicated, detailed 1/72nd scale bomber, for example, your mojo levels are down. And what a lot of modelers do is they come back to these and they know, hang on, I can knock this out in a weekend. I can put it together, it'll look really good, and I can give it a nice paint job, put the markings on, do a little bit of weathering, and mojo restored. You're back in business, you're ready to tackle the next project. Doesn't that make sense for a beginner as well? Now, what about cost compared to a 172 Airfix Spitfire? Well, I built my first Airfix Spitfire about 5 years ago. It cost $12. They're now about $20. I can pick up one of these secondhand from a swap meet for $20. You can get them from a hobby store for $30 to $40. These are Australian prices I'm saying here. They aren't that expensive, and that's another sticking point for what I'm going to tell you is don't get brand new Tamiya stuff. So my big recommendation is, and I'm going to put the numbers on the screen, look at the Tamiya catalog. They have a SKU number, catalog number. Okay, there is a specific range of kits that you need to get as your first one. They start at 61032 and they go up to 61097. I recommend any of the Spitfires, any of the P51 types, the BF109, I think it's an E model, the Focke-Wulf 190s, and the latest ones, the last ones they did in that sort of series were the P47s. Okay, there are some twin engine prop ones in there as well, and maybe do that for a second because the size gets bigger, the complexity gets a bit bigger. Try these ones first. Why not a new tool 2020 Tamiya kit? Now this P38, yeah, it's got two engines, but they have made some recent single engine fighter planes. Look, while these have the same, or actually a lot better because they're newer, fit and engineering you'd expect from the ones made in the 1990s, 2000s, the recent releases by Tamiya are at least one level up in complexity. I mean, they recently released a new Mark I Spitfire to replace this, 1994 version, and it's amazing, but the parts count is at least double or more. Let me just quickly open the box here and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, you're talking not one or two sprues, but 6, 7, and 8, 9 sprues. Lots of details, lots of things to manage. A lot of these kits have photo etch in them, okay? And if you're not really good with your super glue application, that can turn into a disaster. The price level jumps up 2 or 3-fold. You're looking at close to $100 for a kit like this. Now all of this combined can overwhelm a new modeler, and that's not what I'm about. That's not what we should be about as a hobby. We should encourage them to eventually tackle something like this, sure. But maybe a third or fourth kit down the road, stick with those older ones. Because quite frankly, they're just not good enough. Measured by the standard of today or even 20 years ago, they just don't come up to pass. When you look at the fit, the engineering of the kit, the detail that's in there, the quality control, which is a bit shonky even in new Airfix stuff, just the quality of the plastic, a lot of it's like soap, and finally price. I mean, they're sometimes quite expensive. Some of these, they dress them up as new tool kits, but they're not. They're old kits in new boxes, and quite frankly, stay away. The best way I've heard this described is, why fight your canvas? Now, let's say you want to do some landscape painting. You want to do a bit of Bob Ross, okay? Are you going to go down to the local, greengrocer and go buy a potato hessian bag as your canvas? Or are you going to pick up a piece of warped plywood or try to bang a frame out of some old timber lying around the ground? Of course you're not. And then are you going to, use some household latex paint or some carb putty to cover up all the the really bad weave and the hessian and even before you started to put paint on, it looks terrible. Why would you go through all that pain? Why fight that canvas? Now, some of you out there who think, oh, maybe I'm giving you the wrong advice here, Chris. Well, let's think about it from a holistic point of view. Think about this. How many modelers, would-be modelers, have started out and given up this hobby because of this fight that they start with? Now, who knows how much money has been spent, wasted, on these modelers, these new modelers, buying these wretched kits, not enjoying them, chucking them, putting them together, and then chucking them in the bin. And that money could have been spent on these newer manufacturers who are always bringing better, stuff to the market, and those old companies could have you know, either died to the wayside or stopped making that rubbish. Now, because of this poor advice, money goes to, you know, it goes away from the good manufacturers and instead gets thrown at the purveyors of trash who keep popping out these terrible kits. And then the people who give the advice in the first place go, oh look, the hobby's dying because nobody's buying new kits. Hello? We see the same sort of distorted advice when it goes to, you know, materials and tools, paints and so forth. Look, as I said before, times have changed. 30 decades have passed since we had the old Humbrol goopy cement in a tube. Go get some proper solvent, some MEK, some Tamiya Extra Thin or Mr. Cement S. It means that you don't have to fight the kit trying to glue it together with rubber bands and clamps and all sort of stuff. Just glue the thing together properly with the proper tools. Buy a really good set, high quality tool. Sprue cutters. Yes, it's going to cost the same as buying another kit, but it's going to last you the whole hobby, and it's better than using something you cut your bloody toenails with. Finally, start straight away with some modern acrylics or lacquer paints. You know, throw away, don't even consider those old ancient enamels that, you know, would burn your nose hairs off. That's for the past. Use some modern equipment. At the end of the day, it's not that expensive to get started in this hobby with some good materials, some good tools, so why fight that canvas? Look, I know there's some of you out there who are getting a bit miffed right now. What I'm saying is I'm poo-pooing those kits that you love to make. You know, you love putting together those ancient things of the past. People still build them today. What this comes down to is a misunderstanding of the hobby. This is not just one hobby, okay? You look behind me, I've got some aircraft models in flight. Most people do them wheels down. Different hobby maybe. But no, in reality, what it's about is there's a spectrum of modelers now. It used to be, you know, in the way that people would see our hobby outside would be, yep, you know, you sit there at your desk, glue some panes together, get the old enamel brush, you know, paint them, hang them from the ceiling. That's the old days. We've advanced. This is now more of an adult orientated hobby. You can just see that by the prices of things. And what we all have to understand, both new entrants to the hobby and the old school guys, it's more than one hobby. Now, Matt at Dukes Models, he coined the phrase the primer divide. That's the okay, what you build before you put the primer on, and what you paint and weather after you put the primer on. There are those who really, really enjoy that construction phase before they put the primer on, and that's their focus. That's great. There are equally, and in fact it's growing, people who really enjoy it after the primer's down. They love putting the painting down, the markings, you know, and doing some weathering. Now, the problem or opportunity is in recent years, the number of modelers shifting to the other side of that divide, the post-primer divide, has been growing. Now that can be put down to the fact we've got much better kits, we've got more products, quality products available, but it's also a thing with, you know, YouTube and social media, and we're sharing our creations from around the world, and we're seeing the influences of other people around the world, and that's really getting the creative juices going. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. As the hobby moves forward, manufacturers are making better models. More things are coming out, and that's great. That's to be applauded. Things are getting better. However, here's the sticking point. There are some people on that pre-primer divide who are acting as gatekeepers to stop what could be a larger amount of people coming into our hobby. Now they conflate a well-engineered kit, something that fits together quite well, as easy, or, and I hate this, it's just Lego. It's not. They say, hang on, wait a minute, hold the phone. If you want to advance in this hobby, you need to start first with these basic modeling skills to fix all these old kits that had all these old problems of poor fit, poor engineering with putty, sanding, repeat, whatever. And if you can't do that, you can't advance in this hobby. Wrong. These gatekeepers confuse this one set of skills with all that are required across the hobby. They overlook the fact that a beginner modeler hasn't yet, you know, has been able to develop those skills yet to get over that desire and the patience to actually finish that first kit. And furthermore, they don't acknowledge the fact that modern kits don't require the carving, shaping, do-it-yourself engineering, making tabs, adding extra styrene here and there, and then the countless hours of sanding, putty, filling seams that just most kits don't need, or they only need a little bit of it. Now I consider this, it's a pure defensive reflex to that post-primer part of the hobby, where they feel threatened about this more creative approach, you know, after the primer's down, this focus on painting and weathering, because really back in the day, it was a real solid achievement just to get a basic finish out of what objectively is a poorly made kit. If you want to expand more into the hobby, or for example there are subjects that just aren't made by modern manufacturers, you know, or you want to do a major modification of a kit, or even go into the highest realms, which is scratch building, making something purely from plastic and brass and other materials, yes, you need to develop those skills. But not to start with, and not at the risk of killing the hobby by telling people, hey, you've got to do that or you're not a modeler. In today's modern age where you need a hobby to keep sane or to keep, you know, keep going with all these rolling quarantines and COVID problems, you know, the most essential component of your life is time. Do you really want to be sludging it out and spending 2 to 3 or more times as long on one little old kit as it would take you to build, you know, one Tamiya 148 scale kit? Or would you prefer to get that one done and then start a second one and see if you can improve, and you will see that instant improvement because you're on a roll, you're engaged, you're getting there. And this goes into a subject I want to tackle later on in future videos, and that's something called deliberate practice. And by choosing the right materials, the right tools to start with, you are going to see gradual and almost instant improvement. Now the exact opposite of that is what these gatekeepers are saying. They want you to do something that is repetitive and boring, to be honest. It's like going to the golf course and just hitting the ball on the driving range, hitting the ball on the driving range, hitting the ball. I mean, it's great cardio, I guess, but are you going to be getting good at playing golf? No. If you're a current modeler and you're looking to get more improvement out of what you're doing, or if you're an armor modeler, even sci-fi, ship, whatever, and you want to start your first aircraft, please, I beg you, go get an older tooled Tamiya 148 kit and you'll have a very pleasurable experience, and then, you know, you can move on and try different stuff from there. Leave a comment below. I want to hear your thoughts, rant, tell me I'm wrong, whatever you want. Just go down there and go to town. Leave a like or a dislike. Don't care if you don't like what I'm saying. It is what it is. Let's leave it there. You know what to do. You know, like, subscribe, hit the bell thingy, I think, if you're a first time subscriber. I will be putting out more videos on this subject later on. Shout out to the guys at the Scale Model Critique Group. A lot of the thoughts and ideas that are in this rant are actually theirs, and I've collated them all and tried to put this together into a sort of a coherent rant. Is it a rant? I don't think it's a rant. I think it's a fair commentary on what the model hobby is like today. So anyway, enough of that. See you later. Happy modeling.